Was a man named Abbot Kinney, and he was the heir to a tobacco fortune. But he took a world tour, visited Venice, Italy, and he wanted to recreate Venice in the United States, and he decided that it would be on the shores of Southern California. He bought up all of the land around here, from the ocean all the way to Lincoln Boulevard. He had canals dredged. He had a Grand Canal recreated just like in Venice, Italy. He had the buildings built in Italianate architecture that looked like Venice. He imported gondolas, and it was his idea to make this a sort of a resort. And naturally, he went broke. But in the meantime, he had carved out the city of Venice.
My great uncle, his name was Irving Tabor. Abbot Kinney, being a wealthy businessman, did a lot of travel during that time. So my great uncle was more or less the caretaker of his property. Somehow, some way, Abbot Kinney's main residence was given to my great uncle. During those times, blacks could not live in those areas where the house stood. Some more litigation, they said, well, you could have the house, but you just can't have it here. Yeah, the house was moved mostly by some of the workers that did a lot of the work on buildings and stuff here. There's a thing called a paper bag test, because you couldn't go in certain places, you couldn't do certain things if you were too dark, right? So if you were darker than a paper bag, you know, the brown paper bag, the lunch bag, you couldn't go in there and buy this. You couldn't go there and do that. Supposed to be cross-cultured and, you know, very accepting, but prior to, there was, I guess, a color line and segregation, no different from the South.
Back in those days, Los Angeles was downtown, and there was probably 20 miles of no man's land between there and the ocean. It began to decline by the time of the Depression in the 1930s. And then the other thing that happened in this area was oil was discovered along the coast of California, all the way from Santa Monica through Venice, all the way down to Long Beach.
When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, our west coast became a potential combat zone. Living in that zone were more than 100,000 persons of Japanese ancestry. 2/3 of them American citizens. There were more Japanese in Los Angeles than in any other area.
I had just entered Santa Monica High School when all this Pearl Harbor business started. I was 15 years old, going on 16. My mother and father had a bedding plant nursery. When the war broke out, we lost all of that. Instead of receiving a 1A draft card, they received a 4C card. 4C stands for enemy alien. About 1,000 of us from Malibu, Santa Monica, Venice, lined up on Venice and Lincoln. And I think our curtains were drawn down so we couldn't see out, or people couldn't see us being transported. Reached Manzanar, and I was interned in block 24. If you had a good arm, you could throw it into Highway 395 from where I opened my door every morning. I knew my civil rights were being violated every morning because I could see the traffic going north and south, and I couldn't go with them.
The Venice Japanese American Memorial Monument seeks to remind people that Japanese Americans were interned after Pearl Harbor. This monument is to tell the community that this happened here. This happened on the northwest corner of Venice and Lincoln. There's 2 bus stops that pass there every day. We want people to look at this monument and be reminded that this happened.
Having experienced this, that we hope that it would never happen to anybody else.
When I was a kid, probably the first time that I came here was with my father, who came to look at a lot here in Venice, and the first thing that I remembered was the odor of oil. The odor of oil permeated the whole place. And all of the canals that you see, well, many of them were filled in, but they were dirty and scummy, and they had oil slicks on them. You know, who wants to live there? The artists want to live there because it's cheap.
If you grew up in Venice, or if you were forced to come to Venice and live, if you don't know it before you get here, you find it pretty soon that you're coming right into nothing. Some people, they don't want to live in Venice. I mean, this is either Venice or Watts is the only choice you have. If the guy's even got a job, I mean, he's just barely making it, you know.
Oil pollution was more or less cleaned up starting in the mid-1960s and pretty much completed by the early 1970s. And then in 1969, on Friday nights after hours, in his storefront, he began holding poetry readings. And then the late Joseph Hansen and John Harris started the Wednesday night poetry workshop, and it grew from that. A lot of well-known people came through the workshop in the first decade. For example, the actor Viggo Mortensen was in the workshop during that time. Exene Cervenka and John Doe were part of the workshop then, and they were the people that formed the band X. And Tom Waits was in the workshop. Maybe somebody would object. You mean you had somebody in there who was reading the Communist Manifesto out loud as a performance piece? You know, that is protected speech, and there has to be a place where people can come and hear that.
You know, growing up here, I also had the chance of meeting a lot of people that set Venice off. The Dogtown skating community, the surfing community, Zephyr, Suicidal Tendencies. My brother Louis wrote the first 3 albums for Suicidal Tendencies, which is a culture here in Venice.
70s era, just gang culture became more popular in a sense. The gangs kind of correlated and got together to protect themselves.
My wife is the quiet type. She likes things just quiet and peaceful. She doesn't like Venice too much. She would like to move away from it, in a sense. I mean, the thing that she doesn't like is the living conditions of the people around her.
I guess in the 80s, guns start flooding the neighborhood and the dynamic kind of changed. And late 80s, early 90s is when you got a lot of crack into the neighborhood. The violence spiked, the property values dropped.
At the time, Venice was considered the crack capital of the world. Seeing people doing drugs or, you know, being in gangs or people, you know, getting shot or killed, I thought that was normal. That happened in every neighborhood. I felt that we were left out here pretty much to die, that nobody really cared about us.
Somebody dead, overdosed, shot, stabbed, robbed. So as a little kid, you know, you grew up real quick, street savvy. You know, always with a knife, always with a stick, always ready to fuck somebody up. You hit up your homeboys, you cross out Corpus City or whatever. You'd see a lot of the VSLC, the Venice Shoreline Crib. I lost 3 brothers here, went to an overdose, died right here in the alley. My big brother, Mousy, was shot 32 times and murdered. Sad, but I'm still, you know, repping and holding it down. Me and my brother Lou for the Familia Mayorga right here in Venice. I like how they did the skull. Yeah. They blended it in around the star.
Mm-hmm. He did a badass job.
Good job. Oh, that's what I did to Jay Adams. But on his head, the day he got his zipper on his tattoo, on his head.
Government housing on pretty much every block in this 6x6 called the Oakwood area. I guess you would call it projects or tenements, or, you know what I mean. It's something to help keep some of the blacks and Hispanics in the community, but it also kept them from home ownership.
Arrived in LA in a 1964 Ford Galaxy. It was during the moment of the gang wars in Oakwood in Venice, and they were, anything that looked Mexican, looked Latino was suspect. You know, they were shooting old men, old Latino men, they were shooting old, young Latino kids.
Starting in the 1990s, certainly by the mid-1990s, the gentrification began to creep in and has been going on ever since.
I'm going on close to 23 years now, and the place that I live in now is literally a half a block from where I work. One of those 6-unit jewels of places that Venice was known for. and it was convenient and it was affordable, and that's where I've lived. Fortunate for me, the place was sold, and a developer bought it, and they're going to tear it down and build 9 condominiums on it. And I'm trying to struggle with figuring out, I know this is so odd, I mean, I've never talked about this, so you guys have really caught me at a moment where I'm literally processing it. I'm talking to all of you about what's happening in my housing situation.
Come over here for enterprise and business, and then, you know, everybody doesn't fall into place with their capitalistic, materialistic gains, boom. You know, then they make a reason to stomp through them.
You have a new wave of influx of different money and people who simply wanted to take advantage of the financial gain, what they can get out of the city. My family no longer owns a house, so it's a microcosm of a lot of other families that lived in this community that are no longer homeowners here.
See, the Venice that now is what it is it's interesting. These are people's lives that get impacted by these decisions, and it's real. And I'm one of those people that's being impacted, and I can't believe I'm saying that because I've been so quiet about it.
I got pulled over for no reason at all. The cop walked up to my driver's side window and asked me what gang I was in, and if I could lift my t-shirt to show him what gang tattoos I have. I asked him to lift his so I could see what gang tattoos he has.
Gentrification in some ways also a metaphor of what we're willing to see destroyed, and if we can do our best to halt it, to stop it, to pause it, to suspend it, you can change it maybe in your block, or maybe even just within your quick radius of your neighborhood. It's so important for you to remember that history does not begin when you walk in the door, that you're always walking into historical precedent. So to remember that there was something that happened before you arrived. And yes, you don't know everything. You know, you can learn it from the people who live there, or whatever you can find that will tell you historically what had happened there before you arrived.